What if the one thing you call you has never actually experienced an ending? Welcome to Information World. Every human being fears death in some form. Not just the physical event, but the idea that consciousness, your thoughts, your memories, your sense of self could simply vanish. We imagine a final blackout, a permanent silence. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if consciousness, in some fundamental way, cannot die? To explore this idea, we need to begin with something simple but powerful. What is consciousness? Scientists still debate this deeply. Some argue it is nothing more than electrical activity inside the brain. Billions of neurons firing in patterns create thoughts, emotions, identity. When the brain stops, the pattern stops. End of story. But here's the problem. We still do not fully understand how physical matter gives rise to subjective experience. This mystery is known as the hard problem of consciousness. How does electrical activity turn into the feeling of seeing red? Or the experience of love? Or the awareness that you exist right now? Some physicists and philosophers suggest that consciousness may not be produced by the brain at all. Instead, the brain might function more like a receiver or filter, similar to how a radio receives signals. When a radio breaks, the music does not disappear from existence. It simply can no longer be received by that device. If that analogy is true, then what we call death may not destroy consciousness. It may only end its expression through this biological body. There are serious scientific discussions around this idea. One theory called panpsychism suggests that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, just like space, time, or energy. Under this view, consciousness is not something that emerges from matter. It is woven into reality itself. That would mean consciousness does not suddenly appear at birth and disappear at death. It transforms. Quantum physics adds another layer to this discussion. In quantum mechanics, information cannot be destroyed. This principle is deeply embedded in modern physics. Even when matter falls into a black hole, many physicists argue that the information about that matter must somehow remain encoded in the universe. If information cannot be destroyed, then what about the information pattern that forms your mind? Your memories, personality, neural connections, they are physical information structures. Could they, in some deeper sense, persist beyond biological collapse? Some researchers have proposed that consciousness may be connected to quantum processes inside the brain. While this idea is still controversial, it suggests that awareness could be linked to fundamental aspects of reality, not just chemical reactions. Near-death experiences also challenge strict materialist views. Thousands of documented cases describe individuals reporting vivid awareness during moments when brain activity was minimal or even undetectable. Critics argue these experiences are hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation. Supporters argue they hint at something deeper, a form of consciousness that is not entirely dependent on normal brain function. Then there is the philosophical angle. Think about your direct experience. Have you ever experienced non-existence? Before you were born, you have no memory of nothingness. In deep sleep, there is no sense of time passing. From your subjective point of view, consciousness is always present when you are aware of anything. You cannot experience your own absence. The concept of eternal nothingness is something the mind imagines but never directly knows. Some philosophers argue that because consciousness is the very ground of experience, it cannot be reduced to an object that simply disappears. Everything you know about the universe exists within awareness. Even the idea of a world without you is something that appears inside your consciousness right now. There is also the possibility that individuality is temporary, but consciousness itself is continuous. Like waves on the surface of the ocean, each human life may be a temporary pattern. The wave rises, forms, moves, and eventually falls back. But the ocean remains. Under this view, what dies is not consciousness, but the personal structure, the identity, the name, the specific memories. The deeper field of awareness continues. Modern neuroscience shows that the sense of self is not fixed. It is a constantly updating model generated by the brain. Your identity today is already different from your identity 10 years ago. Cells have replaced themselves. Memories have faded or changed. The you of childhood is not physically the same as the you now. Yet something feels continuous. That continuity may not be as solid as we think. If identity is fluid, then death may simply be a more dramatic transformation of a process that is already happening every second. Another fascinating angle comes from simulation theory. Some scientists and philosophers speculate that our universe might function like an advanced simulation. If consciousness exists at a deeper computational level, then what we call death inside the simulation may not be the end at the higher level. It could be like logging out of a character in a game. Of course, we must stay grounded. There is no definitive scientific proof that individual consciousness survives bodily death. But there is also no definitive proof that it does not. The mystery remains open. What we do know is that consciousness is far more strange and profound than we once believed. The universe itself appears to be structured by information. Matter behaves like probability waves. Space and time are not as solid as they seem. Reality at its deepest level looks less like a machine and more like a mathematical code. And here is something even more powerful. If consciousness cannot truly die, then fear changes. Death becomes less like a cliff and more like a doorway. Not necessarily to a specific religious afterlife, but to transformation. To continuation in a form we do not yet understand. Even if we take a purely materialist view, there is still a kind of immortality. The atoms in your body were forged inside ancient stars. When you die, those atoms return to the universe. They become part of new stars, new planets, new life. The energy that animates you does not vanish. It changes form. In that sense, nothing truly disappears. It reorganizes. Perhaps the real question is not whether consciousness dies, but whether our understanding of it is incomplete. Throughout history, humans have repeatedly underestimated the depth of reality. We once believed Earth was the center of the universe. We once believed time was absolute. We once believed space was empty. Each time, we were wrong. What if we are wrong again? What if consciousness is not a fragile accident inside the skull, but a fundamental aspect of existence itself? What if the universe is not only made of particles and forces, but also of awareness? If that is true, then you are not just a temporary observer inside the cosmos. You are an expression of it. And expressions may change form, but they do not simply vanish. The possibility that consciousness cannot die does not require blind belief. It requires curiosity. It invites deeper exploration. It challenges us to expand science, philosophy, and imagination beyond old limits. Maybe death is not the opposite of life. Maybe it is part of a larger process we have only begun to understand. And maybe the greatest mystery is not what happens after we die. Maybe the greatest mystery is what we truly are right now. If this perspective made you think, question, or see reality differently, then you are already exploring the edge of one of the deepest mysteries of existence. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Information World for more deep explorations into reality, consciousness, and the universe.